Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm glad you're here on our new channel. I'm Mariquita Solís, and I'm very grateful to be here today with you. Thanks for joining us as always, and please let us know who's watching and where you're joining from. So, alongside me is my brilliant partner, Linda Tilson. We are the co founders of The Last First Date, a space dedicated to leaving the shallow waters of playing it safe and stepping into true, unforced intimacy of the soul. As transformational guides, both Linda and I have spent years working deeply with the entire human landscape. We've worked with both men and women through their deepest patterns, whether that means working with men to break out of the rigid expectations of the man box or supporting women in retiring the exhaustion of overfunctioning. Every single individual we've ever guided has brought to us this exact moment of combined authority. It's been a learning and growth process. And we now approach relationships, and this is what we're sharing, approaching relationships through a completely whole, unified lens. So that brings us today to the heart of the episode, which is the architecture of intention. So we will be mapping out the foundational blueprint for a relationship that is structurally sound, looking past the superficial patterns that the world teaches us to explore what it truly takes to build a love that lasts. In our transformational work with both men and women, we constantly see how often people mistake the temporary high voltage rush of chemistry for actual structural safety. So, we're going to talk about how to look beneath the surface to find what is genuinely solid. When we work with men to step out of societal boxes so they can find their hearts, and when we guide women to let go of treating partners like projects so they can establish true boundaries, what we're really doing is restoring individual sovereignty. True intimacy doesn't mean losing yourself. It's about two whole people meeting on the exact same frequency without a single ounce of force. And this is the architecture of intention as it is applicable to relationships. And let me tell you that I'm guilty of doing all the wrong things. I'm no saint, and I've been through the ringer trying to force people into relationships when it wasn't correct. And I just want you all to know that Linda and I are not standing here in judgment of anyone, right? This is going to be a loving, peaceful conversation about awareness. So thanks for joining me, Linda.
Thank you for being my partner in crime here. And I love how you talked about the intentionality of being built off of architectural foundation, right? And that there's a blueprint. Because a lot of people would say, there isn't any blueprint for really how to live your life. However, there are some structural maps that when taken together, you can build your own blueprint. And so it's something that you do to really find your way through how to navigate relationships. And I appreciate your vulnerability in saying that I've done it wrong. I forced people into relationships that maybe they didn't have any business in coming with you. And I will say that there's another one that we often do, and we're going to touch upon it today, which I'm happy to be doing that with you. And that is, we don't always meet people where they are. We meet people to mold them into the possibilities that we see. So when we do that, we're doing that person, the other person, a disservice because we're not meeting where they are. We're doing ourselves a disservice because we're trying to shape somebody into someone we want. No, that's not what we're supposed to do. It's not good for either of us. And so, starting with the very first thing of unpacking the difference between chemistry and building on shared values. That is like the piece to start with. That is the very first foundation.
Yes, and I've been swept away in chemistry and where I wasn't listening to my logical side that was saying this isn't a good idea. I was really falling for charisma and that rush of adrenaline with being with someone, and it just override. I wasn't listening to reality. So it can happen so easily when we're in that beginning, and it kind of like the frontal lobe shuts down. We're just like, oh my gosh, this guy or this woman is just the perfect one, and we don't see the blind spots. And we don't even, many times I'll say for myself, I didn't ask about shared values at all. And if the shared values didn't match up, I thought, well, we can figure that out later. Well, we never figured it out. And that's why I'm not with that person today. So all the people I thought we would figure it out later, it didn't work. So shared values are so important. If you don't, and it starts with you knowing what your values are, like what do you want? And we have to sit with ourselves and see what we were expecting for in a relationship.
That's so true. Starting with yourself. And, a lot of people will say they know what they value, but they don't always communicate it. So, communicating your values is important. And going into a conversation and sharing your intentionality about where you'd like it to go or not go, some people I found in working with men and women are afraid to state what the intention is, because if they say that I just want to come in, be curious and open and go with the flow and see where it can lead, but maybe at the end of the day I just want to have fun, then someone that's more intentional, that wants to build something lasting, will hear that and go the other direction in a lot of cases. And so would you rather show up with the true intention and share it, and each person can make a conscious decision about whether or not they want to go forward after that meeting? And I think that, I hear a lot of times people say how they have lost years of their lives because they didn't listen to some of their internal values, and they didn't communicate what they wanted. They did more of the let's go on this journey where it feels like fireworks and it's euphoric. The pacing is extremely fast. And then they don't look at any of the different behaviors in what's going on. There might be some things that don't agree with their values, those red flags. There might be things that they do see, which are those ones where it's positive, and we call them the green flags. But it's so easy to get caught up in that. And you had mentioned, the somatics of listening to your body. Your body will tell you if you are anxious, if you are feeling like you are put in a box. All of these different things can happen to you. So it's more than just listening to the logic of your brain. It's also feeling into your body. And it's something in your life that you have to learn along the way. I don't think it comes intuitively to most people. And, recognizing if, like, you've gone into a situation, you want to know, is this going to be able to build something lasting? Well, you mentioned one thing that I see quite often in the women that I work with is that they will overfunction. So they will meet a man, he'll be everything that is on their list, let's say, and we talked about checking off lists, and they will say and do things to be seen, to be liked, to be desired, to be chased in some instances. And what I would say is how if things are solid or not is if you're having to carry emotionally, relationally, the connection. If you stop doing any of those things, does it fall apart? That will be your indicator on whether or not you have a solid foundation. So if you are a woman that's independent, loves making plans, and you make all the plans, make all the decisions, and then one day you're like, I would like it if he would make the plans and decisions, and you stop doing that, and then does he step up and move it forward, or does he stay where it is and nothing happens? And that works
Right.
and that works in reverse too as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying there, because it sounds like you would have that conversation with your partner, right? And then if they then you would know. I mean, will they say they're going to do that? Or are they going to meet you with silence and say, no, I'm not going to do it? Right. Or even to have that conversation is beautiful, where there's no guessing. That's what we're talking about. The intentionality here, right? We have these conversations where we want to get to the truth. The truth is the only foundation that's going to last. If we're afraid of being rejected and we're doing overperforming and this overdoing, then it's not a solid foundation. And you, just like you said, if you step away from it and the foundation falls apart, if you're the only one giving emotionally or or doing everything and it falls apart, then that says a lot. And it's better to find out than spend years in these relationships, right, where you're giving and not receiving what you need, and not being honest about it, sitting with yourself and saying, are my needs being met, right? And with intentionality. It's all about intention, coming to that awareness of yourself and what your partner is saying as well.
And another thing I wanted to share is that even if we're saying come with intentionality, communicate what it is that you want, maybe you don't know 100% of what you want to have happen. And it's maybe too soon to know that, I'm meeting Mr. Black, and we are, and we are going to get married, have kids, have the house, and all of that. Well, yes, you might have that idea you want to go down that, but have you actually stopped in to get to know the person? So this whole idea of pacing and asking really good questions, and then seeing, what they say line up, going through those conversations, and you know you might decide that even on the date that you go on, the meeting that you have, that things looked like they were going to be where they wanted, and you're like, well, our values are kind of different here. Deal breaker for me. I don't think this is going to work. You could do the pivot where you change your mind and you just let the person know that it was a pleasure to meet you, but I want different things. Have that conversation. I'm going to say that more and more as we're going through these. The more you speak to things, the truth, not what the person wants to hear, but the truth, the more satisfying that journey is that you're building this foundational relationship. It's when we don't communicate things and leave it up to chance that things will always fall apart. The structure falls away, and you were putting in, well, women like to pick men as projects. Well, we're talking about blueprints, and we're talking about structure and foundation. And so that's not because we're doing projects, though. That's so we can build the foundation. And so no one should be a project. We don't mold people into who we want. We meet them where they are, and we decide with discernment. I mean, that's another thing. You said to know who you are and what you value. So using that discernment along the way to know what's good for you and what's good for the other person.
Yeah, and we're responsible for ourselves. And this is why self leadership is so important, right? We're not going to go in here and to a relationship and blame the other person without looking at ourselves. And sometimes we make silent agreements, right? Where we don't speak up and we don't say that this isn't in alignment with what I want in a relationship, right? That's not healthy self leadership. If I'm leading myself, I need to be honest. I need to lead with intentionality again. I can't be putting myself last. I have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, because it's dishonest for everyone, to myself and to the other person, if I am not living up to that standard. And this isn't, and it can be when we're dating, we can completely forget about this because emotions rush in and hormones rush in, and but we want to we want to have a clear head right now. We're not in the relationship yet, possibly, or even if you are, you're watching this and you're focused on this, and so this is the time to really give it some thought. How are you leading yourself down a path that is in alignment with your values and what you want in life?
I like what you said too about, it's that what how you guide and lead yourself, right? And it's nobody's job to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. It's nobody's job to make you happy. It's nobody's job to rescue you. It's none of those things. It's your job to put yourself in a place where it's healthy, that you are doing your own thing. So having that self sense of how much autonomy do I need. And so the way I look at it is, you have the life that you build with somebody together inside the relationship, and then you have that life that continues on outside the relationship. So you should always focus on your goals, your career, your dreams, your hobbies, the things that you enjoy doing, and not try to come into it like, okay, you're my better half. I'm here, and expect that person to carry all of that, because that's an unfair expectation to expect someone else to make you happy and to lead everything. No, you come in with something to contribute, and the other person comes in with something to contribute, and you're that whole person. So the person you bring in is the same person that's out there doing all these things, because I find that a lot of men and women will put off their hobbies. They will put off doing things that they enjoy because they want to focus all of their time, attention, and energy in being attentive for the person. Well, there's a time for being attentive, but there's also a time for doing you. And because if you think about it, what brought that person into your visual light, or your visual space where you recognize them? It was probably because of their passion in their projects, or it could have been that they are solid in their career. It could be that they, take real great care of themselves. All of these things that could be happening. And so those same things that you see that created the interest in the beginning, those should remain, because otherwise you're just molding yourself to what somebody else wants and shrinking yourself down, and nobody's happy in the end. It might be good starting off because you can keep the person, but the goal is not to keep the person. The goal is to keep yourself.
Yeah, and that's why so many people end up losing themselves in relationships years after years after years, and then they blame the other person, or they feel lost, and so then the relationship, it dies. It's over because of this not staying, um, not taking care of yourself in the relationships. So there's your partner, and then the third being, which is the relationship. So all of those have to be strong. They all have to be fulfilled and whole, right? So it can't be you and your partner and the relationship. I mean, where there, it's also enmeshed that there is no separation. That's when we have problems, when there's no separation. Who have I become? I don't know anymore. I'm lost in my partner. I'm lost in this. And it's very highly unfulfilling and frightening when you don't have that sense of self.
And you have mentioned, that you had all of these pillars. And so that's why we talk about the structure. If all those pillars are present, so you show up as your whole self, each person accepts the personal accountability for the good and the bad that happens in the relationship. And when things break down and there's conflict, because all good relationships are going to have conflict, you know how to navigate through those conversations, and you know how to deal with your style under stress, and your partner gets to know under stress how do they deal with things. And so this is why the shared values, knowing yourself, and taking the time to ask a lot of really interesting, curious questions of your partner, And are you grilling them on the first date or introduction? No, you don't have, you don't think of it that way. You just think of, you bring things up. Well, I would love to live in the eastern side of the United States. And so where do you picture yourself living? How many kids do you want? Do you want a more traditional relationship where the woman's in the home and the man is working? Do you want to be equals in the relationship where you both have careers and family and you come together to keep the household? All those different things. And you're probably not going to ask them on the very first time out, but you're gonna be keeping mental note of the things that you ask, and you'll share your values, and you invite the other person to share theirs about different things. And collectively, over time, as you pace yourself, because you don't want to. We talked about this once, where we get in this euphoric feeling, the chemistry is high, and we just do an emotional dump of everything, so they know everything about your life in the first 10 minutes. So I would advocate slow it down to speed up. So slowing it down, pacing yourself, giving things time to develop. So there's a lot of observation that's going to be happening. You share values, you demonstrate them, you see what the other person does with them. You also have times where, you might decide where you're going to go on the date, and you give a date and a time and plan it. And other times you might see, okay, I planned it this time. I would love for you to plan it next. Would you do that? And then you see, do they actually take that opening and walk through the door and actually pick a date and a time and specific place? Or do they just kind of fade out? These are the things that as you're going along, you're building that trust.
Right. And you're communicating the whole time, and never be afraid to say, I don't know, I need to think about that. I mean, that is, we don't want to just give answers to fill the space. And we really have to let go of fear. If we want to create a strong foundation, we have to be willing to speak the truth. And that is what intentionality is about, speaking the truth and being able to say, okay, this person isn't, this relationship isn't going to work. Like I said, we want to make sure that we're not getting years into it, and then we say, oh yeah, I guess I should have seen that in the first few months, but I was so blinded. No. So this is so important. Taking care of yourself and leading with self-leadership and being respectful of your partner, to speak with truth and integrity and not forcing answers when you don't know the answer. Be honest and say, I'll give this some thought. Thank you for asking me this. I've never thought about it before. So
Yes, because in our relationships that we're building, that it should be someone that we find that they add to our lives, and that they are encouraging us to grow, and they're calling us out when we need a little bit of humble pie. Because there's times when we need a little bit of humble pie, and they do that, and then we do the same for our prospective partner. And another thing that we haven't addressed yet that came to mind as we were talking is, there's a lot of us out there that we communicate and we show up in a certain way, and then we're kind of expecting other people to communicate and show up in the same way. And why this came to mind, you had said the word processing. Some people might be able to make a quick split decision on the spot and go with it, and they secure in that decision and go with it. Other people need a little more time, space, and it might take them a couple of days to come up with a decision on things. So remember that all the different personality styles are out there when it comes to all these things, and just see if they're in alignment with your style. So because I will share one thing here, because I think it's important to illustrate the picture. But for me, if somebody comes into my sphere to get to know me, I am a person that when I intentionally reach out to somebody to make plans and get to know them. I wanted to go further. That's the path that I go down. But what I realized is a lot of people love to have fun, meet people. They're in the proximity where they do the things, and outside that proximity, nothing else goes forward or happens or builds a what we would call an ongoing intentional relationship. So you got to pay attention to that as well. Is that not everyone is going to be like you, and that's good because we want people of all types, of all different types of values, because that's what makes life rich. Is but it's our job to be honest about what we want. So for me, the casual relationship where it goes nowhere is not for me. I know that, and I'll say that to people up front that, I invite you to coffee because I like to be your friend and have you be a part of my life. And if the person says, well, I'm really busy in my life doing all these things, I don't have time for that. Well, at least they would tell me and I would know. And then I'm not disappointed and they're not being brought to my projection of we're going to be friends for life. So.
No, that's very true. I've reached out to some people and I've been very grateful when they said, you know what, I really can't, I really don't have time for new friendships. I thought, wow, this person is really being honest. And I appreciate that they said that. I said, well, thank you so much for your honesty. And I'll see you on social media. So yeah, I appreciate what you said, Linda, there. It's very important to know what you want in your life, and is the other person able to come to that same agreement, and match that level. And everyone's different, and that's okay. It can be hard for our egos sometimes, but we're all human beings, so we just got to keep moving through the journey and giving others grace also. So
Yes,
yeah.
giving others grace is, that's what life's all about, is being able to have that compassion. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And I think that we pretty much covered almost everything. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Linda, before I share with our listeners a nice little surprise?
Yes, I'm ready for that surprise. So go for it.
All right. Well, first of all, y'all, I want to let us know who's been watching, if you have any questions. But please remember that building a love of true structure and with integrity starts with a willingness to step out of the shallow waters and to choose depth, right? Really, these deep loves that will last. So if this conversation resonated with you today and you're ready to elevate your standards, we invite you to visit our website and complete your contact information. And as our gift to you, you will be directed to our complimentary self-leadership in love assessment. And this will help you gain clarity on your journey to true unforced intimacy. So the website is the last first date.com. That's right, isn't it?
That is right. I was listening. I was tracking for you.
Yes, y'all. So please check that out. We're here to support, and we're being very honest. We have been through the ringer, and we're not here to judge. We're here to guide, and we're all on a journey together. So thank you, Linda, for being on this journey with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me to be on the journey with you.
All right. And we will see all of y'all next week. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
Bye, y'all.